Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Awake in the World. We are live right now. It is 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Of course, that's if you're on planet Earth. It is the 10th day of February in the year 2021. And failure is not an option. How are you doing tonight? Nice to see you all. Namaste, of course. Let me express my love for each and every one of you this evening. Um, yeah, it's been freezing cold out today, like minus 20 plus, so we've just been staying inside. Never an end to the number of things that need to get done and can be done, though. And it's always nice to have some of that down contemplative time, too. So, what are we going to talk about tonight? Well, we're going to talk about something quite serious, and that is this idea that people get that you can somehow fail in this life. Now, I've also done a post or two around this to try and kind of get the ball rolling on this a little bit. So, to really understand failure, we have to kind of backtrack away from failure for a minute and look first at approval. Because approval is really all about a fear of failure, or failure to be recognized, or failure to gain approval, or failure to do the right thing. And that's always a big problem for people. It really is. So, when we step back from a minute and we look at what approval is all about, approval is a lack of surety within. Now, that lack of surety has usually been placed there. And the reason I say that is that you do not come into the world unsure of anything. You come here fully sure, fully committed to taking this journey. And when you arrive here, of course, that cloak or veil falls so that you may have a as real as possible journey. And this is why we forget the magnificent truth of who we are. If you knew you were immortal, if you knew that nothing could ever harm you in any way, coming here would become a little boring. But as it sits today, it's a wild ride. So back to approval. So that approval, that lack of surety within us, and keep in mind we live in a yin and yang world, a world of relativity where everything is composed of what you see and its opposite. In other words, as I've used many times, to know high, you must know low. To know hot, you must know cold. To know surety of being, you must know unsurety of being. The problem is in the programming, you get stuck deeply into looking outside yourself for approval. And what is the big issue with that? Well, there's a couple things. One, as long as you're looking outside of yourself, you're literally enslaving yourself to the object or person or experience that you're hoping to get approval out of. You will find, whether you're conscious of it or not, that you will literally sell yourself out in exchange for that approval. And again, that approval is all about not only approval, but its polar opposite, which is part and parcel of approval, a lack of approval. This is why you'll hear me and other people who've reached a certain level of consciousness say to you, don't put too much into, someone saying thank you to you even. And now what does that really mean? And I understand there's a lot of people who struggle with that, and they feel that it's some sort of spiritual detachment from reality, and it's really not. What it is the understanding that if I'm going to allow my egoic sense of self to be inflated by your approval, I must always be aware that it will be deflated by your lack of approval. And we forget that. We forget that there are two sides always in any one thing we would wish to have. So, what does that really mean? It means if you are looking outside of yourself for that approval, you will also succumb to disapproval. Now, if you're okay with that, if you're okay with that roller coaster, I'm approved of, I'm disapproved of, I'm approved of, I'm disapproved of, that's okay. There is nothing wrong with choosing to live your life that way. You cannot fail at this. But there are some real world consequences that you will experience if you choose to live that way. And of course, the foremost one being is you will always cycle on that ride from approval to disapproval. So when we look beyond approval and we begin to approach the idea of failing, we have to look at our society ourselves and understand that the concept our society has is of what represents failure and success are ethereal at best. Not only that, we don't even really believe it. And our history proves that out. So, if we go back way back, okay, and we're going to go back to before Christ, it is now 639 BC. And we are watching the birth of Gautama Buddha, who would become Buddha, right? Siddhartha. So he was born into a royal family. He was a prince by birth. According to everyone around him, he was already successful in the moment he was born. He was destined to inherit a kingdom. He knew no equal in battle. He was intelligent. He was looked after by the women and looked after by the men who wished to be like him. He had everything going for him. He was the pinnacle of what it meant to be a successful member, a prince in the royal family. What did Buddha do with that supposed success? Well, he became, in the eyes of that society and many other societies, an abject failure as far as a prince went. He gave up that success and chose to live as a hermit in the woods, to live free of possessions, to seek higher consciousness, to find the way out of suffering for all humankind. And of course, that way is to consciously awaken the egoic sense of self. We can go to Gandhi, okay? I really love Gandhi, actually, I really do. And a lot of people aren't aware of this, but Gandhi was born way back in 1869, right? He was not a young pup when everything happened in Africa and then after Africa in India. But here we go, a man who was reaching the pinnacle of success. He was an Oxford-trained lawyer. He was working for a prestigious firm, and he would have ended up being a wealthy man. And when that chance encounter occurred on the train in South Africa, and he was unceremoniously thrown off from his first-class cabin and left in the dust at the train station. By many accounts, by many measures of society, he at that point became a failure. He didn't care about money. He didn't continue to, work in the courts in that manner. He ended up arrested time and time again. He lived at the will of other people, of benefactors, and had nothing of his own except a pair of glasses, his homespun cotton robe, his little slippers, his shoes, and a copy of the Bhagavad Gita. wrapped in a cloth. That was the extent of his possessions. Let's go back again and kind of hit the middle ground and look at Jesus Christ. Or Muhammad in, what was Muhammad, 570 AD, give or take? Muhammad was born into a, he was born into a good family. But what happens is he became an orphan. And when you became an orphan, there was only one job you could really get, and that was to be a trader. Well, Muhammad became a really good trader. He was an honest man. People enjoyed trading with him. He was becoming wealthy. He had a name for himself. He was known for his truthfulness and his fairness. Everyone around him saw a man that was going to be going places, getting richer and richer and a better and better reputation, and soon would have all the things that everyone ever aspired to as far as success. You see, Muhammad didn't have awakening until much later in life. But when he had that awakening, in the course of 20 years, he managed to unite most of Arabia under one religion. Not from the point of view of success as far as the society was concerned. The same was Christ. Christ was a failure not only to the Romans, but to the majority of the Jews. You see, the Jews were looking for a Messiah, a king, someone who was going to take them out of slavery and subjugate all those who had enslaved the Jews over the centuries and set the Jews free for all eternity. Christ failed them both as far as society was concerned. He was not a success. He couldn't stand up to the Roman government, and yet he did. But they killed him. The Jews themselves turned him in. Not a success by societal concerns. Look at our world today. In our world today, what marks success? And again, we're talking about that average, that cloud that sits around, that says this is what success should be. Success should be having a good paying job. Success should be owning a home, owning a new car. Well, you're successful if you're married to a beautiful man or a beautiful woman and you have children in a nice home and everything looks right. That's success. You got a big fat bank account. That's success. Where does that leave the likes of Mother Teresa? Now, in fact, just to keep the record straight, Mother Teresa's charity had a pretty big fat bank account. But Mother Teresa had very little use for that money herself, outside of using it to serve other people. Now, I'm not saying that should you garner societal success in some way that there's a problem with that. The problem is judging yourself in terms of failure or succeeding. And I am here today to tell you that you came here knowing that there was no chance you could fail. Failure is not an option here. There is not a single thing that you can do. There is not a deity or person. There is nothing in creation that you can disappoint to the point that the universe says to you, you are a failure. You are never a failure. It is impossible for you to fail. The only failure, if there has to be one, is a failure to live life. and your heart is beating right now, you've not failed. You're living life. Life is living you. This idea that we're going to fail translates into needing to do the right thing. And it's the opposition of those thoughts, the idea that, well, this is the right thing. No, this is the right thing. And then someone else says, no, that's the right thing. Between all these thoughts about what the right thing is, you have this confusion going on, where all of a sudden you don't know what to do anymore. Here's the joy about life. You don't need to figure it out. You don't need to think about what you need to do. You don't need to think about where your life is going. Thinking is highly overrated. Trust me, coming from someone, when I was young, I used to literally lord my mental capabilities over other people. I used to think other people were less around me because they did not possess the intellect that I did. That mind, that dizzying intellect caused me nothing but grief. It has served me well as well. But the grief it has caused has been epic, truly epic. The way to get around the fear of failure is to first understand that you can't fail. And second, understand that the reason you're confused about what to do is because you have a bunch of opposing thoughts about what the right thing to do is, which is all based around an unconscious fear that you're gonna mess this up. And it doesn't matter whether it's an interview tomorrow, it doesn't matter whether it's your relationship, whether it's a house you're trying to paint or your car you're trying to, it doesn't matter what it is you're doing. If there is an underlying fear that you're going to mess this up and you're not aware of it, it's deep in your subconsciousness, you're going to ask yourself, why does it appear like I'm failing at things? You're not failing. Every single experience, every single choice you make is made in a universe that loves you perfectly and simply says, as you wish. And there are real world, and when I say real world, we're going to get rid of that world and say that word and say physical world, consequences to the choices we make. Now, if you choose to go rob a bank, you're still not a failure, but you're going to have consequences in this physical realm based on your actions and behavior. None of this is around the idea of failure. There is no one you can truly let down except yourself. And even with yourself, you have to be willing to forgive yourself, to love yourself, to be willing to accept that you're not a failure. Maybe you don't live up to society's standards. Have you looked at our society closely? I said to Kelly the other day when she mentioned my comment on one of her comments in where she had said she was a little strange. And I said, well, I agreed with her comment and I really agreed with the idea that she was strange. And she kind of laughingly called me on it. And I said, honey, to me, strange is truly a compliment. We live in a world where most of the people around us, and I want to make this perfectly clear, the spark of that creator is in each of them. They are made and part and parcel out of the same divine love that you are. But most of them are running around sound asleep, mostly unconscious, operating on a type of autopilot program that we call the egoic self. And so many of those people aren't even aware that there's something more than that. Why would you ever judge yourself against society's measure? There's a good chance, unless you tend to sleep upside down, hanging from a branch or a pole, and like to travel only at night and avoid the sun, that you have a mirror in your home. When we're done this video, I want you to go stand in front of that mirror, and I want you to look deeply into your own eyes and see in that silence of being if you can sense any failure. Look deeply within yourself. You will see an amazingly competent, powerful, eternal being. No matter what you would judge, no matter what your family would judge or your friends judge, you cannot fail this journey. And if you are marked a failure by society and you are living from the highest self that you have available to yourself, and the being that you see in the mirror every morning is smiling at you and you are okay with that being, let yourself be a failure according to society. Be the success for yourself that you already are. By virtue of being born here, you've already been successful in your task. You've come to Earth to have a human physical experience. And that experience you cannot fail at. The day you leave this world will be a graduation of your success in completing the journey. The only thing you can do to fail is to fail to live. Perhaps to fail to see the truth of who you are. To understand that no matter what you perceive of yourself or what others perceive of you, you are so deeply loved, so deeply cared for, and all of creation is watching you. And you want to know why? Because there will only ever be one of you. In nearly 14 billion years, there's just you. No one will ever be like you. No one will be a replica of you. Where in that equation, where in that infinite love and infinite specialness of every single shard, every emanation, every manifestation of that divine spirit, would there be room to fail? You cannot mess this up. There is nothing that you have done, there is nothing that you may do that is beyond forgiveness, beyond repair. We come here for what appears to be a long, short journey. And I say that because there's times in my life where it seemed to last forever, and there's times like these days where I swear the years are rolling by as days do. This is our path. We're here for the short period of time. And then you're going to remind yourself of what you really are when you return to that state of being after what we would call death. And then you're going to choose to come and have that adventure again. No one goes to a theme park for the day and comes home and says, I'm a failure. You are in the theme park of physical life here in this mortal coil, and you are on a large island that we would call Earth. And you are here to experience physicality, to experience a supposed individuation of self. Why? To realize that you're part of the whole. That you've never been lost, you've never been alone. You can truly do no wrong in thy Father's eyes. That's it, that's all tonight. Much love to each and every one of you. You are not a failure. You are a glowing success. Look at yourself in that mirror. Look deeply into your own eyes. You will see your own eternal nature, your own strength. Namaste. Have a beautiful Wednesday night. We will speak again very soon.